Welcome to Closing Conversations, a show for founders, leaders, and sellers who win together. I'm Max Notis. Today's guest is someone who's built, led, sold, advised, invested, written, and performed, and somehow manages to stay grounded through it all. Amos Schwartzfarb is a 6-time founder, a longtime managing director at Techstars, the author of 2 books, and now an active investor and coach for early-stage startups. But what stood out most in this conversation wasn't his resume. It was his mindset. We talk about the pressure we put on ourselves, what happens when we stop chasing outcomes, and how sales and life get a whole lot better when we just take the weights off. Let's dive in. I've been looking forward to this episode, not just because you and I get along really well, like very clearly and evidently, but you've got such a great history and story of like, you didn't know you wanted to go into sales. As like most people don't know they want to go into sales. Like I don't know any kid that's, well, what do you want to do? I want to be a salesperson when I grow up. I've never heard that. And if I did, I'd probably, that's a weird kid. Like I just can't imagine. But you know, you have certain qualities about you and certain personality strengths and maybe even a lack of direction that puts you into a sales job. And then I think there's a fight or flight of like, all right, I got to make this work, or like, fuck this, I'm going to figure something else out. And you had that story of kind of falling into sales, you know, in Silicon Valley in the 90s, and went through a whole bunch of companies with all sorts of exits and endings that I think put you in a better spot than where you started off for sure. And then you went, you know, leadership and kind of like what I understand, like a very good natured leader, and really putting in your time with your folks, you know, giving them what you wish you had and what you knew would make them successful and therefore yourself successful, which I think is the ultimate business relationship. It's like a selfish symbiosis. And now like you're kind of almost on the other side of the fold where you're advising, you're investing, like you almost like, there's no such thing as the promised land. Like I come to realize that professionally, like, I don't know, when you're trying to get into college, you're like, God, if I get into college, I'm the king of the world. And then you get into college and you're like, but if I don't get a good grade on this final, like I'm so screwed. And then you're a senior and you've got grades and you've got the years behind you. And you're like, but I don't have a job. Like I've come to realize there kind of is no final destination of where you're trying to end up, as far as I'm aware. But, you know, I think a lot of folks want to end up in a place similar to where you are, where you kind of get to be in a position of this is where what I want to be doing. This is what I think would make a good impact here. This is what I think will make money. And to even have the freedom to juggle that with, I want to play music. Like you just came out with a new fucking song. That's unbelievable. So wherever you want to hop in, like there's so much to talk about. I'm totally game.
You said some super cool things in there. Maybe a place to hop in, if it's not too self-indulgent, is I both agree that there is no promised land. Man, I'm in the fucking promised land right now. But what I would say is, here's what I'll say, and make like, feel free to like, we could just redirect or we can go deep on it. But I am currently in a state where my life is awesome. I love everything that's happening. Not every day is perfect. Like it's life, but like in general. And one, if you would have asked me at any point in my life, is this what I was searching for? I don't think there's any way I could have ever said it. I'm a place I didn't conceive of. I mean, like from a very macro level, like maybe, but no, not really. And I think like the biggest thing that like got me to this state, and I believe this is just my state now for the rest of my life, but who knows? The thing that got me here was I stopped trying to look for that next thing. I stopped trying to say like, if I only got into the college, if I only got the grade, if I only had another exit, if I only had a bigger exit, if I only had made that investment. The second I stopped and just started, like she was like, look around, like, holy shit, my life is freaking great. Now, to be fair, I guess there's a lot that goes into that, and it took a lot of work from where I came from to where I am, but I'm pretty damn grateful. And it was the thing that like I'm saying all this, but the point that I'm really trying to make is, and I think that there's a direct application with business. It's not lack of caring, not complacency, but it's letting go of the idea that if I only, I will be happy. Right? Doesn't mean we don't have goals. I still have goals, but the thing that I am really focused on, and I talk about this in both of the books that I wrote, this is what I preach to all the boards, the CEOs boards I'm on and all the people that I coach, is the journey and the learning towards the goal is actually the thing that matters, and not whether or not you hit the goal. What if you hit the goal and you don't know what you learned, or you didn't enjoy the time to get there? Like, what was really the point? And I think as soon as I let like that mindset be prevalent and let go of, I have to hit the goal or I won't be happy, but I have to enjoy, here's a place I'm headed. How do I get the most out of the path there? Everything in my life opened up to being awesome.
I agree with everything you're saying. And I'll tell you, even personally, it's something I struggle with. I know that that is the right way, the best way, or the best way that we know of so far. But I struggle with this, whether this be like a how I was raised thing or just my internal psychomotor constantly being like, get it, get it, get it. Like I'll take a walk in a work day, I'll take my dog for a quick walk and I'm just trying to like ring out, or I'll be telling myself, hey, like, let's say everything ended today. Was today a good day? And if your head is down, I mean, you could waste years and years of your life and not actually be happy. And like, I remember when I was in a sales role, like, I just got to hit management. If I can make management, then I'll be like really proud of myself. And like, lo and behold, I was really proud of myself. But then the next day, you start the job. And then it's my salespeople had to make a certain number every week. It was like an SMB, real fast deal. And I never slept on Thursdays because I was so nervous. What if they don't hit it on Friday? And then Friday was a relief. But then I come back and it's like, what crazy anxiety that is. And then, well, if I can just move up to a different level of sales, they say enterprise is all relationships. And it just, if you're constantly focused on, like, if you're looking at the horizon for where you're supposed to be, you're never going to get there. It's something that I think I'm tortured by that.
But if you look at the horizon and you're like, what are the cool things that I can do on my way?
I want a boat. Or you can, or, and this is something I read, it was in a book that I read. But if you also look at the shore, you can say, wow, look how far I've come. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, I never thought I'd be able to do half of this. And I think I'm going to say two things, one being more big picture and one being more tactical. You know, as I talk to a lot of salespeople and work with salespeople, the more focused they are on, I've got to hit my number this quarter. They sell like shit. They sell crappy. They sell with commission breath. They're desperate. They're trying to close every single client that comes across, as opposed to saying, this person didn't need this. Like, let them go. Or this person really needed this and they're walking away. Like, I can't let that go. Like, they don't sell intelligently. They lose all of it. Whereas if, hey, peace of mind, like, you really got to practice this, as opposed to just get the goddamn number, you're going to be a much better, healthier salesperson.
I agree with that. And if you don't mind me circling back to something you said earlier, you said like, no one wants to be a very few people like say they want to be a salesperson, but I was a salesperson. And I was thinking about this when you said it. And it's something that a lot of people in my life now will say like, oh, you were such a good salesperson, or you are such a good salesperson, or you're known for sales. Actually, I am not a good salesperson. I closed a lot of business. The difference for me was what you just said, which is I never, ever focused on hitting the number or closing the business. What I focused on, and this was not intentional, this is just like who I was as a person, is the thing I'm selling going to actually make the person's life better? And if I thought that it was, I could sell with authenticity. And I had a very high close rate because I was working as a partner with the person. Even when I was doing transactional SMB stuff, I was working with a partner, the person on the other end of the phone, helping them make their life better. And I truly believe that. So there was no such thing as a hard close. My close was like, yeah, if this is helpful to you, like, let's do it. And if it's not, like, cool, let me know why not. So I won't bother you again, but I'll learn something. And that was my ethos always.
And maybe, I don't know if this is true for you. For me, this was something that was learned. It wasn't inherent. Like, again, the voice in the back of my head, I'm very nasty to myself. Like, there's no one who's meaner to me than me. And it's always not enough. Come on, come on. Like, there's something to prove, but what is it to prove? There's no actual defined target. It's always just getting a little farther away every time I approach it. And, I'll give you an example. Like, I had a role where, like I mentioned, this high pressure SMB sale. I then went into a role where I was recruiting everybody, interviewing everybody, onboarding them, and then coaching them. And if they didn't make 40 sales in 40 days, they were fired. So I had to get really good at understanding, does this person have what it takes? And if so, what can I do to gain their trust, to work with them, to get them to learn this skill fast? Because if they don't, they're gone. And it's such a high pressure there. And at the same time, this was my favorite job that I'd ever had. Like, it was so fulfilling. It was so rewarding. It was giving people the skill set that the help that I wished I had. And then I went on to do a bunch of other things in my career. And then, 2 years ago, I started a company which is entirely based on building sales teams with a focus on coaching salespeople. If you coach them, they'll do well. If you give them the time of day, if you really get in the weeds and get your hands dirty, they're going to figure it out. They're going to appreciate it. They'll be at your company longer. And I said to my wife when I went to start this company, God, why didn't I just do this right after I was doing this at the other company and all this shit was really fresh? But the truth was, I wouldn't have been able to. Like, I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the patience. Like, I wouldn't have been able to run this well or sell it well or whatever other things that come with it. And I think I still would have, again, like right as I'm saying, I torture myself on that line of, dude, relax, be proud of yourself, and no, go get it, Max. Like, I do, but I wouldn't have even known that the other side was there if I had just started doing this immediately.
Yeah, right. And you wouldn't, and you likely, it would have been harder to create the space to learn because you would have potentially had the pressure of the self-imposed pressure of results. The whole idea of like the self-imposed pressure and the stress we put on ourselves for things that are not real, like they're real because we want them to be, not because they actually are, like I to do X, right, is a fascinating thing to me. I remember when I had my very first realization around that concept. I just written the first book and I was really excited to go out and do a book tour. This was like 2018 or 19. I don't remember. I think 19. Can't remember. And I was like on the road every week in a different city doing book signings and speaking. And it was super fun. I would like go and I'd like teach a class on the book. And then people would come and then I'd sign the book after. And it was really, really cool. And about 3/4 of the way through it, I started getting really fatigued. And I was like, I've got like 7 more trips coming up and I'm running Techstars and I'm so busy. And I like started to break down. I remember exactly where I was. I was in my bedroom, walking into my bathroom, and I had like tears starting to roll down my face because I was just like getting all caught up to me. And I had this realization. I was like, wait a second. I put that on me. I can take it off me too. And then I stepped back. I'm like, what can I take off me? How is it going to impact people? And if it is that okay? And what can I do if I need to do something? And like, all of a sudden, weight off. And it was a really eye-opening moment for me around the concept of the self-imposed pressure we put on ourselves that we then think is immovable, that creates and compounds this feeling of like, I go, and I've got no space for anything. And I'm so busy and I've got to do it all. And where I think you and I may have talked about this last time, this new concept that I believe in, which is exactly what you're describing, which is like the power of missing out. Like, how do you actually do less so you're creating space so that opportunities can come to you and then you can like be there to think about them and to, consider all of the options and not feel this intense pressure to make a decision versus the best decision.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you're saying. Almost like thinking back to like high school. If you have to give a presentation, if you prepare for weeks and weeks and you lose sleep the night before because you're just fine tuning, you're going to go up and you're going to be really tight. You're going to be really tense. You're not going to be your best. And, like who we are is a lot of what we tell ourselves that we are. So if you're constantly under the gun, under the thumb, you're giving a pitch, you're on a book, you're doing anything, you're going to come across as someone who's not enough because to you, you're not enough.
I love it, man. You say some really awesome things. You just said who we are is who we tell ourselves we are. So let me challenge that. What if that's actually not true? What if we are who we are and we tell ourselves the things we want to be or think we should be? And all of a sudden now you're 2 freaking personas. That's a hell of a lot to juggle. Before we started recording, we were talking about your friend Adam. Your friend Adam is amazing to me because he figured out really young who he was and he just lived himself. That is such a goddamn amazing gift that he got.
I think it took me to my 30s to like, okay, this is who we are. Like, okay, cool. Like, I like this guy. I think it took a long time. There's such a power to our minds, and it's like with great power comes great responsibility. And like, it can either be debilitating and you're dying inside every day. And there were times where I'm in this position and people are looking up to me and they're like, wow, he's done. And I go home at night and I think, what a fucking loser I am. And it's like, why, man? Like, why? Right? But you're not. But it takes, I think, even being in a good place in life, with good people. Like, I met my wife and my life, I'd never felt better about myself. And I think that's part of, I was able to be comfortable with her and be honest with her. And it took a while to learn how to be comfortable and honest with people. And I think that comes to a comfort and an honesty with yourself. Deep shit, man. It's true though. Like I think of, my best pitch, and I remember learning this in sales of like, I would call it the fuck it mentality. Like if you get this deal, great. If you don't get this deal, all right. Like, and the more you can embrace that, the better you're going to be in your job and, in anything. But it's something I think that you can be told to do this. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. Like you have to learn.
Yeah. You know what, like that self-imposed pressure, I think, work with me here because this is a new thought and a new analogy. So I'm not sure if it sticks, but tell me if it sticks. To me, that self-imposed pressure is similar to saying like, I need to carry the groceries in from the car. And in order to do so, I'm going to go grab 2 20-pound weights in each hand and hold those also. So I've got a job to do, but I'm going to make it fucking harder on myself because why? So I'm going to carry more weight around than I actually need to carry instead of saying like, oh, I'm just going to go do the thing I'm supposed to do. Release yourself from the pressure.
I like that analogy a lot. And you know what? I like, well, I have to put these weights on. Well, why would you do that? Well, because that's macho, because you're soft if you don't carry weights to get groceries. Like, but then is that true? No, you're just making it harder on you. It's like, just put the weights down, go get the groceries. That's a really good one. And you probably don't even realize that you're doing it. You probably think, well, I'm carrying these weights and therefore, look at me.
100%. I think we don't, I mean, I'm conscious of the fact that I do it and I still catch myself I caught myself this week with the song that I just released. Like all of a sudden I would like went into this, like no pressure, no expectation. And then all of a sudden the song's out and like in the middle of it, I'm like, but blah, 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 blah. I've got to, I got to get more streams. I've got to figure out how to get it in front of more people. Hold on a second. Like, what was the goal of this? Like, remind myself, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. And then again, looking back at the shore, like how many people even can write a song? How many people have the fortitude to actually put it out there for other people to hear? Like that in itself puts you in the top 1% of the world in that category.
Man, this is a good thought. It's true. I believe that to be true. And especially coming from like the tech world and like the music world being, there's actually a lot of similarities, but like they're different, right? Like, and now because social media is really freaking smart, like even though I'm what part of the 1%, I feel like, one of a zillion because everything that I'm being fed, commentary on social media, right? Like I don't actually feel special because I see there are literally thousands of people doing what I'm doing and going through it on their own journey. But you're right. You got to step yourself back from it and say like, first of all, what really matters? And second of all, like, how do you have gratitude for the fact that, like I'm able to do this thing that maybe someone else wants to do and doesn't know how to figure it out or hasn't had the ability to, or whatever.
Totally. Like, and this was something that became, I think, a big topic when social media came out was like how it would affect people's mentalities about themselves. Like I go to Florida, but I saw my friend went to Greece and I'm like, damn it, I can't go to Greece, and you just think down on yourself and it hurts how you feel about yourself and how you felt about your trip in Florida. Or like, again, I'm starting this business and I haven't been doing it for more than 15 minutes and I'm on Instagram and I see all these like people who are like advertising their businesses. And I'm like, how do they have money to like advertise their business? God. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Hey, you got to really bring it back in and I don't know, ignore some of this shit. And just like you're saying, who are you doing it for? Why are you doing it? Why are you making it so much harder on yourself? Like it's all these like false indicators of success that have nothing to do with you.
So interesting. Even the most successful people, I think we do a lot to ourselves and maybe this is for me the theme. So I'm projecting my own stuff, but like get in the way of just like pure joy. Like what, lots of different people can have their own versions of like, what is the purpose of life? For me, like, what's the purpose of being here if you can't find like goodness and happiness in everything that we do?
Right? I think it's easier said than done at the same time. Like, again, I think probably like you and I seem to have like I guess a progressive mentality, in regards to this. I think it was an older generation that was like, if you're not working till your hands bleed, you're lazy. And I think that rubbed off, and hey, you're kind of trying to undo a little bit of that to get into a healthier place. But I think I'm going to venture and say most people have not, maybe they'll say they get that, but have not actually gotten to the root and tried to massage this out of their system, and it hurts them. And like, you know what? I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I watched this documentary on HBO. It was about George Carlin, and it was fantastic. And I loved George Carlin growing up. Like, my dad got me the 7 dirty words you can't say on television. I know all of them by heart. We curse on this podcast, but I'm not going to go through that list right now. But there was this one bit of him where he's whacked out high on cocaine, and he's talking in his room by himself, and he's on recording. I don't even know if he realized he was recording or whatnot, but he's saying like, you're such a fucking moron. You're so stupid. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. And it's like, dude, you're one of the greatest that has ever done this. Like, if you're not happy doing this, who would be? What could make you happy? And, maybe it takes, I mean, he had a lot of work to do on himself, obviously, but, taking that step back and say, hey, do I even belong here? What part of this do I like? And just being really honest with yourself. And maybe it does take one step back to go 2 steps forward. But, like you said, as far as we know, we've only got one shot at life. And so if you spend, and I think there is something to an investment, like, all right, work real hard this week because then you got the big thing next week and that'll pay off, but that's conscious as opposed to doing that for everything and just selling your happiness for nothing. And then, okay, you are in a place that a few years ago you're thinking, wow, that if only I could do that. Okay, you're there, but you're miserable. And why? And I don't think it has to be that way.
Right. Yeah. They're like, I think likely, and I would say highly likely, they're 2 separate things. And that's a hard thing for someone to admit to themselves, which is, oh, I got the things I wanted and I'm miserable. Well, maybe you're miserable. That's the thing to work on. And you can still have the goals and go for the things, but like, why does one feel the way they feel? Not like, and not to get into like a therapy side of things. I mean, I'm certainly not a therapist, but like that to me feels like what we were saying before. Like, I think it is potentially easy to argue from a pessimistic point of view that what I'm about to say is not true, but I believe this to be very true. Almost everything is, in fact, everything is perspective. You can have the same situation and you can make a decision to find why it is a positive thing. The worst thing in the world, you can find a reason why it's potentially positive, and that just might be like, what am I learning from it that I can make myself a better person? Like that might be the positive thing is this thing is awful. A plane crashed and many, many people died. That is an awful thing. What is there something to learn from that for yourself that makes it less awful?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm also, for the record, I go to therapy. I fucking love therapy. I've been for years, and I think a lot of these things that we're even talking about, I wouldn't have been able to do without therapy and have someone just bouncing off of me, validating, and then like you really, it makes sense. But Bill Burr had a line, also a comedian. He was talking about how they're like, how did like you bomb sometimes, right? Especially when you're trying to make it, it's even harder because as a comic, you're really not making much money. It's such a gray area if you're ever like, where are you in progress? And they're like, how did you handle like that bombing? Like, and he was like, the way I would think about it was this was just part of my story. Like, I'm going to get there. Like, I'm kind of hell bent on getting there. I'm not doing anything else. So if I bombed, this is one of the things that had to happen on my way. And when I talk back on those days, like this is a part of it and it's not crippling. It's not taking me out of it. He also had another interesting take. And I also, just judging from him on interviews, I can't imagine he's actually that calm about it because I think he's not calm about, really anything. But he was talking on Howard Stern about how he had like a mid-career freak out of like, he was in like some stand-up club in St. Louis. He's going there for like 11 years. It's the same people, same this. And he just freaks out like, oh my God, am I ever going to make it out? Like, holy crap, am I ever going to make it? and how he took himself out and he like really toiled over this for a while. And he ultimately says, comes around, whatever. And he's like, but it took longer than I should have. And I think he was on Howard Stern, and Howard's like, well, did you like put on music or like just write a new joke? He's like, you know what, I did, but it like took me longer. Okay, just do this and snap out of it. Because like we're saying, mentality is a lot. And then Howard asks, well, did you call anybody? Was there any like mentor that you had to call and be like, yo, help me talk me out of this? He's like, I didn't. He's like, also, I didn't want to, because the truth is you can only call somebody once to talk you out of something like that. If you're calling multiple times in multiple breaks, you're becoming like a lot. We all have our doubts and we all have our friends who help us on our feet. But if you're now relying on someone to keep you on your feet, like that's getting a little bit much. I don't know. That just made me kind of follow that train of thought.
I mean, I think it's the same thing, but I have like a slightly different way that I think about that. In fact, I just did a video post about this last week or over the weekend, which is there's a thing that I think that I have become exceptional at in my life. That is sucking. And what I mean by that is like, I've gotten really comfortable with, in order to get good and find satisfaction with a level of performance, I've recognized from doing lots of different things that you have to suck, and you have to suck for a long time. You have to bomb those jokes. You have to come in last in a race. This is just par for the course for anyone trying something new. You can't be an expert right away. It takes a really, really long time. And being very comfortable with sucking, for me, has become a superpower, because I know that if I like it, I will put in the time to get not sucky.
Totally. Like I learned the guitar in my adult life, and that was the best advice I got was like, you're going to suck for a while and you have to be okay with that. And if you're okay with that, you're going to learn the guitar. And I remember when I would meet new salespeople just coming into the workforce and I got to teach them how to sell, I would say like, listen, here's the deal. You're going to suck. You're going to suck. Nobody has ever walked in here having never done this and just figured it out, but you are going to get better. Like those are two things I can tell you. And like, I'm going to show you some of your calls in a few weeks that you did on the first day, and you're going to be like, holy fuck, like that was awful. And it was like, but that's the whole point of this.
God, it sucked to get good. Yeah.
Even though, again, this is all so fresh because it's been recent, was starting this business where the first year I didn't really work with many clients. I just was putting all these pieces in place. And then I'd look back and be like, God, what did I do over the past year? And it was, dude, you had so much you had to learn. Like there were so many calls with different people and companies and things that I took because I had to, just to learn of where to spend my time and where not to spend my time. And, I could see in another version of me not long ago looking back and being like, you wasted a year, and being really mean to myself. But the truth was it all had to happen.
I had that experience at Techstars even. Like, I think by the time I left, maybe when I left, I might've been on the downslope, but like, I think I was really, really good at my job for some amount of time, maybe to the end. And in my very first program, I bombed. And not the whole thing. I think the whole thing overall was good, but like there were moments that I had to like, I'd go home and I'd be like, man, I bombed today. Like I need to figure out how to go back in and fix what I did. But that is what made me become excellent 3, 4, 5, 7 years, 10 years down the road.
Yeah. Well, instead of crippling you, it gave you fodder for stuff to work on, to like learn from, and then you inherently get better at it. Dude, I got to tell you, this was not the episode I was expecting to have. Well, this is a great fucking episode.
This is fun. Yeah. This is fun. I didn't know what we are going to talk about, but I love when it just goes where it goes. Yeah.
I think, listen, like the audience on this show is typically sales leaders, founders, salespeople. And I think a big part of sales is, and just the psyche in the DNA of a salesperson is there's a lot of pressure. You're like kind of wired to be in these pressure situations all the time. Like, when I'll meet someone at a wedding and they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm in sales. What do you do? Oh, like, we immediately click because we kind of go through some experience every day that nobody else is going through. So I have a feeling this will resonate really well with folks because, inherent to the lives of the people listening to this show, there's a lot of pressure. And with pressure, like if you can handle it well, if you can help yourself in a way and handle like we're saying, if you don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders. Like if you're pitching and you're not thinking about your pipeline, and if you don't close your pipeline, you won't be able to buy the house. Like how the fuck are you going to close a sale if that's all on your head.
That's right. And I think like maybe there's a really good point that we both sort of made earlier, but just to reiterate it in case we didn't make it earlier or just to make it clear, there is a very big difference between not caring or being complacent and not focusing on the outcome, but the thing that gets you to the outcome, the journey. And so like, when I think about it from sales, like if a salesperson is like, I have to close the deal, that is the thing they're focused on. And then they may or may not close the deal. But if the salesperson is focused on how do I make sure that I'm delivering the best value to the people who need that in their life to make their lives, whatever it means, better, I would bet on that person 1,000% of the time that they will be the better salesperson, because 1,000% of the time with not just with closing the deal, but with closing the deal and then having a customer that is really, really happy for a really long time.
Totally. And I think a lot of that also stems from their leadership. Like I've had lots of sales leaders who they won't listen to a call. They won't review my pipeline strategy. But when it comes to the quarterly report of, all right, where are you to your goal? They're bringing down a hammer. And so then when I go to my next calls, like we're saying, I have nothing to improve from to work with, but I've got a shit ton of pressure that's coming down on me, as opposed to a salesperson, a leader who's, in the trenches and realizes like, hey, we got to get you going or it's not going to hit that number. There's something tangible to work with.
So like from a metric perspective, maybe this is the version of that. They're focused on the end number, which is a lagging metric of success, versus all the leading metrics where they can be focusing on like, what are the 8 pipeline metrics? How is each individual sales rep tracking with each one? You can then very clearly see with data, where is a salesperson struggling, and then help them get better there. And then ultimately that leading metric will lead to everything else improving.
Right. But if you're leaving the entire onus on the salesperson to read that from the data, improve it, fix it themselves, or they're gone, like
it's literally not their job and it shouldn't be the expectation. Now, when you have people that can do that, awesome, right? But not everyone can do it. Not everyone has the exposure to be able to understand how to do that. So until you give that to them, how can you expect them to do it?
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're told this is what you need to be doing, and if you don't do it, that's on you. But if you're not being told, hey, this is what you got to ship up, work on.
Well, so they close the deal. Okay, great. I'm not doing that. But like, why are you not closing the deal? What's the path? What's the journey? Right? It always comes back to that.
Dude, this is good stuff. So good seeing you. I hope you have a great weekend and great trip ahead. And
let's connect again after you're out of the haze of whatever. And we'll reconnect.
You got it.
All right, brother.
All right, I'll see you soon. And that's a wrap for this episode of Closing Conversations. Huge thanks to Amos Schwartzfarb for joining me. He's proof that you don't have to grind yourself into dust to build something meaningful. If this episode hit home for you, subscribe, leave a message, review, or share it with someone who needs a mental reset. And if you're building sales teams that deliver without the unnecessary pressure, check out www.commissionsales.com for more. Until next time, I'm Max Notis. Let's get closing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, you can always catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more episodes of Closing Conversations.